ask her explicitly.
All right.
Oh, random question. In the new stuff, if you don't mind my asking, just like there was a reference to something that I thought was referencing the Torat Habayit, but it said something like Siman something, and I have a PDF of Torat Habayit that I downloaded that doesn't seem to have Simanim.
This was in the Beit Yosef was referencing Torat Habayit, or I was referencing?
No, I think the Beit Yosef. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't look in any of the earlier Rishonim. I went just to the Beit Yosef for this one. So
right. Or maybe it's the Bayit Chadash, right? But any like tips on how to find things in the Torah Bayit?
Is not usually done by Simanim. It's usually done by Shar and.
Shar. Okay, that's what I thought. So maybe I'm confused about who's being referenced. Right?
Yeah. If you tell me where it is, I'll take a look and see if it's.
Okay, I'll.
Yeah, I know I gave you guys a lot of material, so. I kept putting stuff down on paper. I was like, we need to add this, and we need to add that, and we need to add this, so it's hopefully not too much.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll get through all of it, but
yeah,
I think when I started, like before you sent it, and we were happy to see that like the things that we were looking up anyway were things that you had. Like
good.
Yerushalmi and were things that you had put on.
Well, no, that's good. That's so. All right, shall we do a little Chazara?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the Mechaber.
Great.
We'll see if we can do both. We're doing Yeridit, Sadi Gimel, and maybe Sadi Zayin too, but let's see if we get a chance. And we've done Sadi Zayin. We've kind of done to some extent because we did the Tarova semi-equivalent to it of cooking things in the same oven. So, okay. I just want to say, Tikva, your picture looks like it should be moving any second. It's like a real pose.
Yeah, that's the point. It's a trick they suggested we do at work so that if we can't have our camera on during the meeting, at least it doesn't insult a large gathering.
That's amazing. I was like, I keep feeling like that piece in like in the first Harry Potter book when Ron can't understand why the poster doesn't move. It's if you're a Harry Potter fan, I don't know, but
yeah. That's funny. So. I heard something about a student putting an animated picture for so that they were having. Yeah.
I've seen that. I've seen.
Were you the one who said? Anyway.
No, a friend. Well, maybe it was me. A friend of mine showed me that he does that for meetings. Sometimes he'll put like an animated picture, or he'll put a picture of himself in a pose like Tikva has, and he'll get up. And that'll be his background, and he'll just
sneaky.
All right, with that, Sadi Gimel in your idea, Shulchan Aruch, Kedera she bishlu ba basar lo yivashlu ba chalav, and Yavni, you're going to read for us.
Okay. Kedera שבשל בשר לא יבשל בחלב, ואם בישל בתוך מעת לעת אסור ונותן טעם. וצריך לשער נגד כל הקדרה. אבל אם שהה מעת לעת, קודם שבישל בה, הווה לנותן טעם לפגם, ומותר התבשיל. אבל הקדרה אסורה לבשל בה, לא בשר ולא חלב.
Great.
Yeah. Do you want to translate or go on?
No, unless there are any questions. The one thing I'll add, and this is the big debate at the beginning, we won't look at the shach is worth looking at there, but there's a whole question about even if you don't go by kfela, like if you don't go by kfela, which Ashkenazim don't, like it says b'not and tam, like how is it ever the case that you could have a 60-to-1 ratio with a pot? And so there's different ideas that I want to just throw a couple out there. One is that I think is the less likely is that you have a very thin-walled pot with a very big volume that it contains. So you could have a 60-to-1 ratio potentially. But one of the other ideas is that if it's a new pot, which might include a pot that has only, hasn't been used in the last 24 hours, and that I only cooked a little bit of basar in it in the last 24 hours, then you could have a ratio because that it hasn't absorbed anything more than that small amount of basar. And you could, I think there is a hava amina there that you could say, well, even though the basar is noten tam lifgam that's in the walls, it kind of combines with the new basar, and the answer is no, that it's like every 24 hours a pot becomes new essentially. And we've seen some debates about, well, what if you use it for something not basari, not chalavi, something as we call parv in between, but does that and when there's a whole debate, does that kind of reawaken or reset the clock on the 24 hours or not? But yeah, just worth knowing that. And also just like, I think worth noticing, I don't think that they have a concept in the Shulchan Aruch of a pot that is not basari or chalavi. I just don't think it really exists for them. It's there's no word parv in their world.
So when it says asura levasher ba lo basar velo chalav, it means asura levasher ba, period.
Yeah, no, we'll see that you can maybe cook parv things in it, right? But
I thought what you were saying is that they don't. Yeah,
they don't have a pot that's designated as a parv pot. I don't think in their world so much. And we'll see this come out when we play with noten tam lifgam in a few weeks. So that's a side note. Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
So when it says noten tam lifgam is mutar, so I mean the food that you cook there is mutar to eat lechatchila, but the pot is, you can't cook in the pot lechatchila. So it means if you cook in the pot b'diavad, you can eat the food lechatchila. But if you cook in the pot lechatchila, is that food still mutar, or at that point you're not allowed to eat it?
So you like you had a meat pot, you cooked milk in it. It was noten tam lifgam. Is that what you're asking about? You cooked milk in it.
So I'm asking, yeah, just how it relates to lechatchila and b'diavad, because when it says it's mutar, that sounds like you accidentally use this pot. Now you don't know what to do with this food. Oh, you can eat this food.
Good. So,
right.
Why don't you take a look? I was going to do this anyway. Tikva, you want to read the Shach Gimel for us? Yeah, this is sorry. I just want to just to remind people, this is on the if it's noten tam lifgam, right? And I cook, so I have a meat pot. It's sat for 24 hours. I then cook milk in it, right? The food's mutar and the pot is asur to cook either meat or milk. So keep going. Sorry about. I just want to give that background.
ובשל זה, כמו שאסור לבשל חלב לכתחילה בכדרת של בשר אחר מעל לעיל. ואילו אם בישל בבשר תוך מעל לעיל, ובשל בחלב בשיטה, זה צו של אסור.
Great.
Yeah, right. Okay. אבל אם בישל בחלב בשיטה זה מותר בדיעבד. אבל שאר דברים שאין עליו בשר ולא של חלב, כגון ירקות ודגים וכהגמנה, מותר לבשר אפילו לכתחילה, ולכמן 60 לא, לכמן סורי, ד' מנהי, כתב הרב, נוהגים לעצור הכלי שאינו בן יומא, אפילו לשאר דברים, אפילו בסנתחיו, או?
It's
yeah. Ben Yomo, אם כן, כל שכן כאן שנתבשל בבשר ממש. וצריך לומד כאן סתם הדיבורים לעניין דינה,
עיין מה שכתב.
עיין מה שכתב שם, this is study dollar.
Yeah. Right, so give us the general summary.
Yes, I think it was, let me see if I'm getting this right. But if it is within the 24 period, you can't. Sorry, it's just trying to summarize it. But I think it is sort of what I was saying before, that if it's within the 24 period, even b'diavad, you can't eat it. But if it's after the 24 period, it's b'diavad, you can eat it, but you still can't use it for that lechatchila. But for other things, in theory, you could use the lechatchila even for those, even to cook. But then we're machmir on that, and we don't.
Good. So I'm going to make one little amendation to that. Right. Yeah. Let's say it's a meat pot. I cook milk in it. It's sat for 24 hours. It's noten tam lifgam. I cook milk in it, and then so now it's like a combined new milk old meat pot. If I cook meat in it, it's asur because there's milk that's live in the pot, right? It's within 24 hours. If I cook meat in it, b'diavad, if I cook milk in it, sorry, if I cook meat in it, it's asur, because now you have milk meat. But if I cook milk in it, again, same thing that I most recently used, b'diavad, that's mutar, because again, the meat is only noten tam lifgam, the milk is not, and that's b'diavad okay. We don't do it, right, l'chachila, but you can. If you did, rather, you can eat the food. And he adds, you can cook everything else in it, anything parv, except we don't do this because for the same reason that we don't, say like, oh, I had a meat pot that's set for 24 hours. I can now go cook milk in it. L'chachila, we also don't, at least according to the Ramah, we don't do that because because of things within 24 hours, we avoid things that are noten tam lifgam as well. And this would be a noten tam lifgam milk meat pot, which is problematic. So, if that made sense. So. I should probably make a chart of this actually, but good. Any questions on that since everyone just went quiet on me?
I don't think so. So just again clarifying, just because I think the thing on my mind is that if you cook in it, if you make the choice to cook in it, then like if you cook in something b'diavad, we would still eat the food. Like let's say after leile, but it's sorry. So we have the meat pot, we cook milk in it, we wait 24 hours. Now we want to cook. So we have the meat pot, we cook milk in it, we wait 24 hours. Now either meat or milk, whichever one we cook in it, would be an issue. If you choose to use that pot, then you wouldn't even be able. If you accidentally use that pot, you'd be able to eat the food. But if you choose to eat that pot, you would not be able to eat the food. Right?
After 24 hours, if any pot out there that hasn't been used for 24 hours, if you did cook in it, it's just mutar.
So you can actively choose to use that pot and say, I'm going to go use this pot.
Oh no, l'chachila you can't.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. Like that's what I'm saying by l'chachila. It means the use of the pot, and then that's the choice that then affects all the other, whether or not you can eat the food b'diavad.
Yes, exactly. So b'diavad, you could always eat the food after 24 hours, right. But l'chachila, you can't go say, I'm just going to, I have this pot that's like, I need the kasher. I'm just going to use it for milk, let's say. But yeah. Now what, we've seen things about questions about when can b'diavad kick in l'chachila, kind of, like when, zman dechak b'diavad dame, right? It's like a very pressing matter. Now what that is, I'm not willing to make a claim on. I think that's a question above my pay grade. But it's
right.
You could imagine, I could just as a scenario, right? You've got a bunch of guests coming for Shabbos, and you've got like no time left to cook, and it's the only pot you have left to stick food in, and it's been 24 hours, like maybe. So.
Right. But I think that's really what my question was, that if you accidentally use the pot, then you can intentionally eat the food.
Yes, exactly.
And that's considered b'diavad, or that's considered the mutar, because the use of the pot was accidental, but the eating of the food is intentional.
Yeah. B'diavad almost always has some sort of, in these cases, right? Not just a case of like, I ate the food, I don't have to bring a korban, but rather, I can now eat the food. The food's cooked, essentially, so it's a b'diavad situation. This, by the way, shows up all over these issues. We've seen a little bit of this, of things that like, a non-Jew went and cooked, let's pretend, something that doesn't have a bishul akum issue with it, and you're not worried about ingredients, cooked, like, I think the Ramah at some point says, we buy nuts from the non-Jews. Right? Their kalim may not be so good, but clearly their kalim haven't been used for 24 hours between, them, since that was used for something asur. So we're not worried about it. And they cooked it already. It's done, right? That's potentially a b'diavad situation. It's already cooked. As opposed to, we can't walk up to them and say, can you go cook this for me now in this pot? But it is confusing. So, tough. I hope that clarified things.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. And this, by the way, I want to say, like, this and the next Siman, very common issues, right? This happens, right? People accidentally use the wrong dishes. It happens. I mean, I've done it. I just had it happen recently, actually. it was a knife, a meat knife that got pulled out to cut cheese. So definitely hadn't been used for 24 hours. In fact, I'm actually not convinced this meat knife was actually ever used. It's a steak knife. We don't actually eat steak, but we have steak knives. So I'm not convinced it was ever used to cut meat. The cheese is fine that we ate, but the knife probably needs koshering.
Hot cheese?
Was that no? So we're gonna get into these questions about knives and whether or not like the duchte de sakina counts as cooking. Essentially, it's a great question. But no, not hot cheese. It was cold cheese. All right. Let's do the Ramah here at least. So Yavni, you were reading. Tikva, you read. Isaac, do you want to read?
Yeah. So aval sha'ar devarim mutar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Aval sha'ar devarim mutar. V'din kisui kedera kedin kedera atzma. V'yesh machmarim b'kisui v'mar da'af al pi she'eno ben yomo dino ki'ilu haya ben yomo. וכן נוהגים בקצת מקומות, וכן אני נוהג מפני המנהג, והוא חומרה בלא טעם. This is my favorite statement. Okay. So everything else is permissible, and the pot's lid has the same deen as the pot itself. There are those who are stringent on the lid to say that even if it's not a ben yomo, you treat it like it's a ben yomo, and that's what they do in some places, and that's what I do, even though there's no reason for this. I'm sorry, this just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
So, you want me to keep going, or do you want to?
Yeah, keep going. This is, by the way, I just want to point out, this is like the first thing that the other things you can cook in this pot. Now, this is what Tikva was talking about that we saw in the Shach. Mm-hmm. The pot lids are just one of these things that, and there's a lot of interesting thoughts about why this is, but they are things that we tend to be more machmir about, and also just like a really, I think, wonderful Ramah here of. I think it's wonderful. Other people don't, but I think it's like, yeah, I have a tradition of doing this. Like, it doesn't have a reason, but like, but for the average, case, it's nothing's lost. He's going to talk about what happens if something actually is lost. Then how do you act? But pot lids, and we can come up, as I said, we can come up with all sorts of reasons why pot lids are more stringent than the pots themselves. I do wonder, I have had a thought, maybe I'll throw this out there. I mean, I think this may have been suggested to me by Michael Rosenberg at one point, that people, pot lids are something that we're a lot less careful about than the pots themselves. You kind of grab a lid and shove it, especially maybe less so in our day when we have lids that match pots a little bit more, but that you grab and you just throw over something. And I'll be honest, I still do this with, I'll just grab, if I don't find the right lid, I just grab a lid that fits on the pot, semi. And so it's probably much easier to be careless with. And so you may imagine this is some sort of public policy, as Rav Landis would call it, to prevent carelessness.
Mm-hmm. Then here he's going to give a heter. Only bimkom sheyesh shum tzad lechatir belav hachi o shehu letzorach Shabbat o hefsed yesh lechatir im ein hakisui ben yomo kmo sheba kedera atzma. So basically, if you have a situation of loss, or you need something for Shabbos and it's not a ben yomo, a lid, you can say that it's mutar anyway. Okay. V'im lekacho kisui roteach mikdeira shel basar v'natnu oto al kdeira shel chalav im shnehem hamim shnehem asulim im yesh ma'achal b'kdeira shel basar v'chalav v'im hakisui tzonen v'hakdeira chama nami shnehem asulim Im hitchil hazia tachat hakisui tata gavar. I'm just going to translate that.
Great.
Okay, so if they took a the lid from a boiling pot of basar, and they put it on top of a pot that had milk in it. If both the milk pot and the lid are hot, actually, I'm not sure what Shnehem means here. I would think Shnehem means the milk pot and the lid.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, right. Obviously, because the meat pot is boiling. We just said that. Sorry. So if they're both hot, they are both aser. If there's food in the basar pot, if there's food in the pot, then it's a basar b'halav situation.
Yeah. I want to amend that. I think he means if there's basar in one pot and halav in the other. In other words, if you're using a milk and meat pot, but one of them has carrots in it and one of them, has meat, that may not be such a problem. Which we'll get to more, is these questions of noten tam bar noten tam. It's if you're actually like actively cooking milk in that pot and then you pull it off and then you put it on on the meat that we're really worried about here. So.
And if the lid is cold and the pot is hot, they're still both aser, because if it started, they're still both aser if it had started to sort of like drip liquid under the lid, because this is the tata gavra situation.
Exactly.
Ve'im hakisui cham v'hakedera tzonenet hakol sharei rak hama'achal tzarich keklipa im efshar lekocho ואם לאו, הכל שרי, ואם לא היה מאכל בקדרה, הכל שרי להווה כשתי קדרות שנגעו זו בזו. Okay, so if the lid is hot and the pot is cold, they're both permissible, but you need to take a klipa from the food. But if you can't take a klipa from the food, it's all permissible. We saw this previously in an earlier Siman, this idea that the milk would be mutar, even though you can't take a klipa from it.
Exactly.
And if there's no food in the pot, then all of it's permissible, because it's just like two pots that bumped into each other.
Yeah, exactly. Two pots without food in between them, right? We know it's not I can take a milk pot and a meat pot, I can get them boiling hot, I can stick them next to, or I get them red hot, let's put it that way. I can stick them next to each other, they touch each other. I haven't really lost anything as long as there's no food to transfer flavor between the two of them. So, but good. This is actually, for all of the difficulty of Sadi Gimel, it actually boils down to just this at the end of the day. But even though it's a difficult topic. Good. Any questions in the 1 minute we have?
I have a question. It's not so much here, but in the tour, going back to what we were talking about in Shir, about the idea of the flavor, like if you did, now I'm the Westfa, right? Yeah, the Westfa, right? The idea that if you cook vegetables in between, it could lessen the lua. And so that idea of the Nicholas, the lessening, is that the same, it's the same thing happening there that we think is happening when we talk about time being batal b'shishim. I understand they're very different concepts, but I'm just saying what the reasoning behind it is this idea of the flavor just getting so thin.
Yeah, we're going to see this next week a little bit, and I think the week after a whole bunch. There's some idea that maybe it's a little bit debated if this happens in food, but definitely in vessels, and this may be something special to vessels. Vessels, they retain flavor, but they don't really retain flavor the way that food retains flavor, right? If I infuse, meat into liquid, right? The liquid really has a meat flavor to it. If I cook flavor in a vessel and then I clean it really well, it has some flavor of the meat. Maybe you can really think about cast iron, but it's not as strong. And each time you start cooking it kind of loses more and more of that. Or I think there's even one Rishon, I don't remember who it is, who even says all these flavors get kind of mixed up in there, and then at the end of the day, you don't really have a strong version of that one flavor. So I think there's pots are just not seen, vessels are not seen to hold flavor in the same way that food does. And so that's really, I think, what's going on. It's not really kind of a, and some of it might also be, right, if you cook in between. One of the other theories, though, is maybe what you're saying, a little bit like batel b'shishim, is that each time you cook in it, if I cook water in the pot, it pulls out some of that flavor. And so, you know, it lessens it. It almost koshers it in some ways. I mean, that's really what koshering is. It's really, you know, the pot can retain some flavor and you're pulling some of it out. So, or all of it ideally in koshering, which is one of the theories why you can't kosher kli cheres, is because kli cheres you never fully pull out the flavor. Was that helpful? I'm not sure if that was.
Yeah, it still sounds like, it doesn't sound like two very, it sounds like two related, like it sounds like there's this principle of sort of how flavor works.
Mm-hmm.
And that it can get diluted in various ways. And then these are different ways that it can get diluted, and we're using different terms, but it's structurally or conceptually or like qualitatively rather the same. It's just quantitatively different or halakhically different, but it's not, they're not talking about a different principle of flavor, of how flavor works. It's the same underlying principle that flavor gets diluted in various ways.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And there are different ways it gets diluted. And you know, one of the ways I've thought about it, and I don't know if this is helpful or not, is I don't know if Xerox machines are even a thing anymore, or copy machines are even a thing anymore. But you know, it's like when you make a copy of a copy, it kind of, it's never as good. And maybe modern machines are better, but it's kind of the same thing as like, it is when you impart flavor in a vessel and then that vessel then imparts flavor, it just doesn't do as good a job of imparting that flavor. As not that it's a copy, but it's the same idea, is that like, you know, each degree of separation kind of weakens it. And we're going to see, I think we may have seen this in Tarovot already, but we'll see this again Basar B'Chalav, that the one thing that undoes all of that is harifut. Harifut is going to be the flavor strengthener. You know, which in some ways maybe makes sense. I think it does make sense, right? Is this sense of, right, what's harif? Harif are spices, things that are meant to draw flavor out of food and to enhance their flavor. So, but I think you're right. I think there is a similar that, you know, different things weaken tam. One of them is just having an overwhelming amount of food tam. Another one is having the tam have to go through kind of a lot of stages, weakens tam as well. So,
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. And by the way, the other thing that undoes that, right, would be Hanan in some ways. Hanan is a sense of that the tam doesn't get weakened, it gets strengthened almost. Or maybe that's outside of the realm of tam, and that's about a different thing. That's the other possibility. And I will say maybe that's my own personal thinking around this stuff, is that I think the Mechaber is fairly consistent about tam, but I think there are places where tam isn't the only factor going on there. There are other factors in Isser V'Heter. And sometimes when we become too reliant on tam as the only like theory, some other stuff stops making sense. So we'll see.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, hopefully, I'm sorry, I hope that was helpful. But we will, I don't know if is it this Siman that where we skipped it, or maybe next Siman? I gotta double check. Oh, I think it's next Siman. The Shach is gonna actually have this whole thing about a claim, like, even though, right, with all this tam, you know, chalisha and tam lifgam, don't, like, once a pot has like a certain name status on it, it's a basar pot, it's a halav pot, don't mix it, right? Like you can't just like, things need to be consistent, and it's not just about the tam thing. And I think maybe that's, I don't know if people have seen this. Khatam Sofer has a tshuva where he says you can't kosher a dish. Like if I have like a dish, you know, like I use it for meat, and I want to, I don't know, next week I want to use it for milk. You can't just kosher it. He says for Pesach you can do that, but you can't for the rest. And I think some of his, I need to look back at like what reasons he gives there, but I think some of it has to do with this idea that like the thing has a status, and it's not just about the time, it's about the you know, kind of the name status of the thing. So. Yeah, Tov. All right, we didn't spend too much time with Siman Sadi Zion anyway, but you know, I just the general thing Rav Lanas wanted to take away is, if you cook meat and milk in the same oven at the same time, even if it's a big oven, maybe it may not be ventilated, cover one of them. And Rav, I will say, because Rav Nachman, I was trying to see if he would share it. He didn't share it this time. When I took Isser V'Heter with him, he actually shared a story where, maybe he did when we did it in Tarovot, but where it was like Friday afternoon, he needed to get Shabbos dinner and Shabbos lunch ready. And did he share this? You have any? You're nodding. He was cooking lasagna and chicken, I think it was. I think it's what he told us. and he covered one of them and he stuck them in the same oven at the same time. And obviously, right, you don't want one above the other if it might drip, you know, but he did it. So, you know, and Rav Linus, you know, he said a layer of aluminum foil is plenty for, you know, a covering, even, you know, even though by public policy, we generally double wrap. You don't need that if you're going to do this. So I'm not recommending this to anybody, but I'm just saying Rav Nachum has done it. So that's, you know, Maseh Rav. All right, any final questions before we Tov?
Sure.
But thanks for
Thank
pushing
you.
me.
Thank you.
And I'll see everybody next Monday. So
Yeah, from the car.
from the car, yes, I might be teaching from my car. So all right, cool to everyone.
All right.
Bye. Thanks.